Hello and welcome to another edition of the Transfer News Central podcast, also now known as 15 Minutes of Football podcast. Again, hopefully we have some branding coming before the start of the season that gives it a bit more X factor. Obviously, I'm Johnny, the host. Obviously, that's James, who's always here.
Hi everyone.
Yeah. And this is the podcast where we discuss the most complex football topics in 15 minutes or less. Usually pick four, which I like to think are exciting and enjoyable things to discuss. You may disagree. First of those four, James, we're looking at attacking signings, potentially attacking arrivals to various clubs in the Premier League, and picked out three. Many on Twitter were going with a gold, silver and bronze ranking, with Jaden Sancho being a gold, Kai Havertz being a silver, and Willian being a bronze. Looking at those three, we're just sort of summarising them all at that same time. Is that a fair ranking? And if it is a fair ranking, that's not really been too discriminative towards the bronze on that list.
I think in terms of being like spectacular kind of, marketing promotion, like image, certainly Sancho is the most glamorous of the three. He's the most eye-catching, I guess, of the three. In terms of the way he plays, the pace, the intensity, the number of goals he scores. And he's I mean, this phrase gets used a lot, but he genuinely is a generational talent. He's high class. Kai Havertz and obviously I have a bit of a vested interest in Kai Havertz, being a Chelsea fan. But so I've seen a lot of him. He's a big talent as well.
Some described him as generational.
In Germany they do. I read, I think Rudi Völler said he is a combination of Michael Ballack and Mesut Ozil, and better than both of them.
It's quite a statement.
Yeah, which is a huge statement. I mean, he's very highly rated in Germany. He's seen as a massive talent. They see him as a future 150 million player. He's a very big talent. He's not quite as well known over here because obviously Sancho's English and Sancho gets more attention. But in his own way, he's almost as talented. But yeah, and then of course there's Willian, who most people who watch the Premier League will know Willian. He's probably one of the most divisive players that I've ever known. He's a talented player. There's no question about it. He contributes a lot to every team he plays for, but he's also very misunderstood. Yeah, that's three, isn't it? That's three.
Yeah, that's three. I mean, it's obviously Sancho to Man United. That's really the sort of blockbuster headline this summer, and I think that's more of an inevitability. Even though there's a few stories suggesting, United aren't going to be bullied into paying over the odds. We know if it comes down to it, they probably will pay over the odds. So it doesn't really, just like they did with Harry Maguire 12 months ago. I think they said a similar story then as well. Then obviously Kai Havertz linked with Chelsea, Bayer Leverkusen superstar. And again, you're right, James. I think because he's not British, he doesn't quite have the same invested interest from the UK, general watchers of football in the UK. But certainly, as you said, described as a phenomenal talent. And whenever I've seen him play, and I've seen him play a few times, he never disappoints. You always get the sense that he sort of almost Messi-esque floats around the pitch, and then suddenly, bam, he's gone, and he's got that burst of pace, such composure on the ball. I think the one big difference between Kai Havertz and Jaden Sancho, I think Jaden Sancho's numbers are, they paint the picture straight away. Kai Havertz not quite as good, but not many are. Sancho's got double-figure goals, double-figure assists, but Kai Havertz's overall game, whenever I've watched him, he is a very special player, and obviously, I'd be very excited as a Chelsea fan if that one was going to come off. And then with Willian, of course, that one's to Arsenal, because if Chelsea get Kai Havertz, they're going to have lots of attacking players with versatility. So you can have Kai Havertz can play at right wing, as we discussed just before we started, can play as one of the attacking number 8s. Frank Lampard does want to go to a 4-2-3-1, he could play as a 10, or he could even play as the striker because he's done a false 9 role at Leverkusen. And Timo Werner can play as a striker or as a left winger. Christian Pulisic, right wing or left wing. Probably better from the left.
Play both sides as well.
And Hakim Ziyech, right wing or attacking 8s or number 10. So much versatility there that almost Willian. There is less of a need to maybe have Willian around. I know Chelsea wanted to keep him, but they weren't willing to give a 3-year deal. Looks like Arsenal could be willing to give him a 3-year deal. And with Willian, I think it's more not. I mean, Sancho, as we say, the blockbuster signing. Havertz is like, I suppose Sancho's like the protagonist. Havertz is like the deutagonist, the second guy in that story. And Willian's sort of the ancillary character, the one who's sort of in the background a little bit. But again, that's just not really down to himself, but down to the fact there's 2 really big moves potentially in the offing elsewhere. And I think with Willian, I didn't like it at first. I thought this seems a bit silly, but the more I look into it, 100,000 a week for 3 years equates to roughly, just over. I think it'd just be over £15 million, roughly over 3 years for Arsenal. Which isn't too bad, is it?
He's getting a 10 million signing on fee as well, apparently. And there's an option for an extra year, so it could potentially be 4 years.
I mean, it's not. I don't think it's too bad in the current market though for an Arsenal, for a football club like Arsenal that want to cut costs wherever possible, as they did with those 55 workers, which is a bit leaves a bad taste.
Doesn't quite sit right with me that they're making 55 people redundant.
No, not in this.
£2 million, I think.
No.
And then they go and splash 10 million on a signing on fee for Willian.
Not in this climate, but I think we were discussing though, James, beforehand that we'll push that moral issue aside and we'll let them debate that for the time being. But but we were discussing before that we think all 3 of these players that we just mentioned could make a very good impact at the football club.
Absolutely, yeah. Sancho, Man United will definitely benefit from having Sancho. He can play left wing, right wing. He scores
number
goals.
10.
Number 10, yeah. He scores goals. He makes goals. He's dangerous. He's difficult to defend against. And when you add him to the likes of Fernandes, and then you've got Mason Greenwood who will then be able to play as a striker, which is actually his best position. And they still got Martial as well, who did really well this year. Rashford, then they'll have a really strong attacking unit, very dangerous. And when you think they'll have Pogba, who probably signed a new contract. Matic has been playing well as defensive midfield. That's quite strong.
It is. I mean, you just touched on it there, James, as well. The versatility, what we've already said of Sancho, means if he's at right wing, it's probably Fernandes in the 10. Because United are seemingly a team that looks like they're set up in a 4-2-3-1, which is a formation that is maybe dying out a little bit, but works for them, works for Bayern Munich. I mean, when they're going forward, it's almost a back 3 with Pogba just in front, and then all of them just sort of in that final third and just taking chances. It's very exciting. But just on looking at it from a 4-2-3-1 perspective, Sancho's at right wing. You've got Rashford at left wing and Fernandes as the 10 and Martial at front. Sancho's at left wing. You've got Greenwood at right wing, Fernandes at the 10 and Martial at front. And then if you could have Sancho in the middle, and also, as you just alluded to, being Sancho at right wing doesn't mean Greenwood can't start. It means he can go up front. But if he goes up front, he's moving Anthony Martial out, who's in fine form. He's doing remarkably well in that striker position. So you've got so much going on there. And you could probably argue that Paul Pogba can also play for the Bruno Fernandes position if necessary, with Fred and Matic behind. So that is, versatility, depth, and it's really exciting for United. And really similarly to Chelsea as well with Havertz, as we said, as I've already touched on, really, you think he'll play as one of the attacking eights, but there's a it's really difficult to predict, isn't it? Because you can still make a case for him playing as the striker, false 9, or the right wing.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen at Chelsea this year, Lampard's preferred formation for me is a 4-3-3 with 2 8s. And
Certainly post-lockdown, it has been.
Yeah, and I think that's how he wants to play, ideally. I think he's not been able to play that too often because Kante's missed basically half the season, and Kante is the guy that he wanted to play as a defensive midfielder, because Jorginho isn't really suited to playing a defensive midfield role in that kind of formation because he's not quick enough or strong enough. Hence, they're trying to get rid of Jorginho. Yeah, and so you've got Mason Mount, who's kind of really established himself this year as a kind of almost a first-team regular. Played 37 league games, 51 games overall. You know, he was very consistent, scored goals, created goals. You know, he was very influential. And you've got next year you have Ruben Loftus-Cheek, fully fit from the start of the season, fully fit Loftus-Cheek is a very good player. He can play that number 8 role, and then obviously Kovacic can play that role as well, although he doesn't score or create quite as much.
I have to ask James, actually, now, when you mentioned the formation, and I know a friend of the podcast, we hate him, Jordan, said that he had an interesting thought, that it's sort of the whole Chelsea way, the expected squad that they're going to have for the next season would suit best the 4-2-3-1, because Kovacic is best in a double pivot, 2 6s.
Yeah,
Kante is best in that double pivot. Jorginho, if he's not offloaded, is also very good in that double pivot. And Havertz is a number 10 usually.
You could. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think that's an option. Lampard has played that formation before, and he can. I think he'll use that formation. I think that's the thing of getting Havertz, is that it allowed you to play different formations as well. Because Havertz basically is just as good in every position. He's influential, whether in the number 8 role, he's influential in the number 10 role, or wide right, or as a false 9. And that's the beauty of having him, I think. You know, and also it allowed you to deal with injuries a lot better, because say Loftus-Cheek is injured, or one of the wingers is injured, he can come in and play. He's. I mean, having watched him, his passing, his creativity is very reminiscent of Kevin De Bruyne. Very reminiscent.
That's a big shout. Very big shout.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's an unfair comparison.
But of course, as well, with Havertz coming in, it means there's less reliance on Willian, as someone who's been at Chelsea for a long time. Exactly. Club wanted to give him 2 years, I think, by what I've read. He wants 3 years. Yeah. And it looks like he could get that at Arsenal. Again, someone who so much Premier League experience, Willian. A player who, as we say, does divide opinion, but largely, I mean, I think when he's been, I'm looking at this from the outside, but when he's been at Chelsea, he's always been sort of he's never been the main man. He's always sort of been just behind the main man, and he sort of gets on with his job relatively well most weeks. And even though he can be frustrating, I think, it's no coincidence that Jose Mourinho really liked him, because he worked so hard and he always gave 100%. And go on.
Yeah. Frank Lampard has mentioned his work ethic over and over again, and Lampard is someone who demands a lot of his players in terms of work ethic, in training as well as in games. And he played with him as well. He's known him for 7 years. Lampard's always spoken highly of him as being an example to the young players, and someone who does extra training, and someone who's, I think Chelsea have missed him this year when he's not played, actually, as well. Chelsea, I think he's got 11 goals and 9 assists this year or something, and he created the most chances as well for Chelsea.
Do you think he gets into Arsenal's first 11?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think if you could play for Arsenal, you could then play Aubameyang as a striker, and you could play Pepe and Willian as wide players around him, or you could play Willian as a number 10. As that option as well. Yeah, and I think you mentioned false 9 as well.
We did it. That's perfect, actually, because we just in about 1 minute we can just seamlessly roll into the next discussion.
So, and the big thing that Willian will bring to Arsenal is experience. Like he's won Premier League titles, he's won domestic cups, and even Europa Leagues. He's played a lot of Premier League football, so he'll bring a lot of experience to that squad.
Mm.
They need, because they've got a lot of young players there as well. So
Pepe as well, someone who looks incredible in some moments and looks a bit off in other moments, would benefit, from someone like Willian, as well. And I actually thought, just to round this discussion up, I thought they might go for Zaha, but when you think about it, Zaha, maybe 40-50 million transfer fee plus wages, would be a lot more costly option for Arsenal. So I think they found a better value for money situation there. Anyway, sort of discussion number 2, which, as we say, seamlessly rolls on, is my little thought on the death of the number 9. We'll come back to Willian, actually, so any Arsenal fans listening are in for a tweet, or anyone who's interested in Willian, or Chelsea fans even. But death of the number 9, just sort of something that I've been thinking about for a while, actually, and sort of came up again yesterday when I saw Manchester City start with Phil Foden in a false 9 position, Gabriel Jesus, a traditional striker, playing at left wing, Raheem Sterling at right wing. I know Jesus has already said, actually, my favourite position is playing left wing, which is odd for someone who starts out as a striker to say, but it makes you think, really, I think. Is it more beneficial for goal scorers to be playing out wide? Obviously, with Liverpool, you've got Roberto Firmino, who plays the false 9 role, and many people call it the Firmino role now, where many people, Liverpool fans, are quick to give him praise and for the standard of his performances, even if he's not getting 15 to 20 goals, which and he only scored 1 goal in the Premier League at Anfield this season. And people would say, "Whoa, that's not what you should expect from a striker." But Liverpool fans say he's one of the best in the world at what he does, and people say, "Well, that's silly. He's a striker." But it's almost like the defensive striker, the selfless performer at the top of the pitch. And what I see is it's a fluid shape. So let's say a 4-3-3 with a false 9, when the team's attacking, almost becomes a 4-3-1-2, where the 2 wide players come inside and almost act like 2 strikers, and the striker, or the false 9, drops back into an almost number 10 position and opens up spaces in behind. So the defensive striker, as I've seen it called as well somewhere else, and it's I find it quite interesting that do you think there is a method in the idea that the striker, the 30-goal, 25-goal striker, is dying out, and if they are fast and athletic and capable of scoring goals, are they better playing on one of the flanks?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. It's an interesting topic. I mean, because Timo Werner, for example, at Leipzig this year,
very good.
He's been playing kind of just off somebody, kind of coming
left
in from
forward.
Left.
Yeah,
he's been in the centre. He's come into the centre, but he's come from the left. Kind of a left, not really a wing, not really left wing, but kind of left of central, kind of an inside forward on the left, with a central striker kind of playing that role that you're talking about, in a sense.
Voller at Leipzig usually, I think, does play that role.
Yeah, exactly, and that's been very effective for him. It'd be interesting to see how he's used at Chelsea, actually, But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, like, you look at Liverpool. Liverpool are the prime example of this, because their top scorers are Mane and Salah, not Firmino. Firmino's been excellent at what he does, and his main job is not to score goals, actually, and they miss him when he's not playing, because he plays such an important role in the other 2 players getting forward. And I think Man City have done this for a while as well. I mean, I think I've seen even Sterling play as a false 9 at times as well. I mean, they're very fluid, Manchester City, in terms of positions, especially attacking wise. A lot of their attackers can play in different positions, and often do. Like Foden, for example, you'd say he was an attacking midfielder, but he's playing false 9. And so that's something about modern football that is very true. I mean, Yeah. So
And
I think
just to correct myself, I knew I'd said this. I didn't want to interrupt you, though, James, because when I shouted Voller out loud, I was thinking because we're talking about Kai Havertz, that's of course the Leverkusen striker
yeah.
Patrick
Yes,
Schick. Patrick Schick is the Leipzig forward, and of course, as we say, he's quite a physical presence, quite a striker who, but as we say, a physical presence who does a good job for the team with Werner. He gets more out of Werner playing on that left forward side. Because of course, Leipzig like to play three at the back with attacking wing backs. Again, the right forward and left forward. And we've seen with Sancho as well. Actually, Sancho's played right forward and left forward with Erling Haaland up front. Although, again, with Haaland, he's actually a goal scorer as well. He's not just someone who wants to create for his teammates as such. And I mean, one thing as well that, and as we say, that'll be interesting actually with Werner, because of course coming to Chelsea, people think he's just going to go up front. But at Leipzig with Schick up front, maybe it makes sense to have Giroud there as well sometimes.
Yeah, or Tammy Abraham. Yeah.
I think there's certainly potential there, and there's a lot of options that Chelsea are going to have. But then I think as well with Arsenal, and you mentioned Aubameyang could maybe go up front, and we were sort of saying with Willian. We were saying before we started recording the podcast, could Willian, as you said at Chelsea, again, you didn't say it on the podcast, you said before we got on the podcast, you said he was better in central areas where he had more of an influence.
Best position, yeah.
Yeah, and he's a nimble mover, good, very fast, can draw players out of position. And we were saying, could Willian be set up as a false nine almost, like the selfless role? Because he's a selfless player, and that could give license for Pepe and Aubameyang, who are absolutely rapid and also very, technically good players, particularly Aubameyang in the finishing department.
Yeah.
Could that give them the license to be act as two strikers almost from right and left?
He absolutely could do that. There's no question about that. With his work ethic, his skill, his passing, whatever, he could definitely do that. I even suggested that's somebody at Chelsea that we should try him in that role, and it's never happened. But I think there's something I said to you before we started recording about when even Hazard has said that he loved playing with Willian, because Willian would do all the work. He would drop deeper. He would keep possession, and then he would release attacking players like him to go and do their thing and express themselves and score goals. And so that tells you what kind of player he is. So he can absolutely do that role, especially under Arteta, who's a very progressive coach and could almost certainly adapt players and improve players, even a player like Willian, as old as Willian. So that's definitely possible. It'll be interesting to see how Arteta wants to use him, because Arteta has pushed for them to sign Willian, so he clearly must have a role for him.
I mean,
see what he does with him
as well. Arteta had a preference, didn't he, at points for Eddie Nketiah over Alexander Lacazette. I mean, Eddie Nketiah's nowhere near the goal scoring. Doesn't have the goal scoring antics of say Lacazette, who is, I think if he starts every game, 38 games of the season, you'd expect him to get nearly 20 goals. In a good or more. He's one of those players who's a very good finisher, but Arteta preferred Nketiah, who seemed to do more of what he wanted from the striker, which was make himself a nuisance, pull, come deeper, allow spaces in behind. I know Lacazette's played more towards the end of the season, but I don't think it'd surprise me if Lacazette went, because as we say,
no, it wouldn't surprise me either. Actually,
no. As we say, I think he's looking for someone who can maybe get more out of it. Well, Aubameyang's been doing fantastically well, but the fact that I think he's been playing left wing consistently all the time makes me think that's where Arteta sees him now, and certainly backs up this point about this death of the nine, as we say. And I know we hark back to Liverpool, but Salah and Mane are the goal scorers there. And I suppose when you look back at Real Madrid in the past, Bale and Ronaldo were the people who got the goals. Lionel Messi at right wing, remember. I know he was a false nine under Guardiola, did remarkably well, but usually plays right wing again, can float where he wants. More of a free role.
Yeah, the Real Madrid one is a really good example, because when Ronaldo was at Real Madrid, Benzema basically played that false nine role. He worked hard. He withdrew. He linked up the play. He allowed Ronaldo in particular to get forward.
And
score.
Bale as well.
And Bale, yeah. But I mean, he's been so underrated at Madrid, Benzema. He's an excellent player. And this season he's actually scored a lot of goals, which has shown that when he's actually allowed to be a kind of central striker,
I think he's got the fourth most Champions League goals, Benzema.
Yeah, he's been a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
27 goals this season, I think he's got in all competitions.
Well, I think he's acting more like a striker now, isn't he? Because he does.
He played a really important role in Ronaldo being what he was and Bale being
absolutely.
But yeah.
Very underrated performer. But on the other side of it, I mean, you've also got the goal scorers that still are ruling the roost. Immobile, 36 Serie A goals, most goals in Italy. For Lazio, and certainly he seems to be someone who's not necessarily succeeded outside of Italy. Certainly when he went to Dortmund, didn't do particularly well. But in Italy, usually amongst the goals, 36, incredible numbers for him. Lewandowski, 34 in 31 Bundesliga appearances. Lewandowski is the best striker in the world right now, and for Bayern Munich, it makes sense just to feed him. Even though they've got goal scorer, I mean, Muller's got 21 assists in the Bundesliga this season, which is remarkable in itself.
Incredible, yeah, really incredible.
Position. But I think with Bayern as well, I mean, Bayern can score goals from anywhere, really. They've got lots of potential goal scorers, but when they've got someone as good as Lewandowski, it makes sense to have him in the box as much as they can because he is.
Yeah, you just give him chances, he'll score.
A machine. Yeah. I mean, at Man City as well, I mean, Aguero is one of the goal scorers, isn't he? One of the renowned goal scorers. But at the same time, even he doesn't, he scores goals because he's a goal scorer. He's a great finisher, one of the best around. He has been for a long time. But he's changed his role a lot under Guardiola, hasn't he? So much so that he has to drop deep and work hard and let the others go behind him in a way. A little bit like Firmino, a bit sometimes.
Yeah, he's evolved and adapted his game, yeah. But he still managed to score goals even doing that.
Exactly,
Which is a mark of a really great player. So
It is. I mean, with Firmino, a lot of people, as we say, he does. I think Firmino probably does do the role slightly better because, such as influence as he says on Salah and Mane, that selfless striker. But Aguero as well is the selfless striker, and we still expect him to score the goals, and he does score the goals. But then, as we say so often, it's Sterling and Mahrez that were getting the chance. I know he's injured now, but as you say. People cut Firmino slack, myself included, when he does miss because we say, well, that's not maybe his area of strength, and then people say, well, he's a striker. Yeah. Aguero performs a similar role, not quite as well as Firmino, but the difference is when he gets a chance, he's just as lethal as his two wide players, isn't he? So, I mean, as well, I'd like to say Harry Kane as well. I think is someone who is, put him up front, he can easily get 25 goals. He has done it for Tottenham before. But he's also so much more. He can also do the selfless striker, dropping deep. He's a creative player, is Kane, isn't he? Technically very good.
Yeah,
aware of teammates.
He's a very. I was going to say he's more of a traditional number 9 than most strikers. But he has learned to adapt his game still, because you need to have a more complete game now in the modern game. To be honest, Jaden Mourinho is a very good manager for him, because Jaden Mourinho likes to have that big target man up front, and he's perfect for that. He's probably lucked out with having Mourinho as his manager.
In summary, James, is the death of the number 9 a genuine thing, or is it hyperbole?
I think it's slight hyperbole, because I think there's still a role for the traditional number 9. It depends on the manager. It depends on their philosophy, basically.
I'd agree with that as well, to be honest. And I think as well for smaller teams, the number, teams say coming up into the top divisions of the respective countries, particularly in the Premier League, you'd always say, can your striker get double-figure goals? That's what teams will look towards, particularly teams that maybe are likely to be a bit more risk averse, play longer balls. Is the striker going to be able to get goals when the balls are pumped into the box? Is he going to be able to get his head on it? Is he going to be able to win games? And of course, Antonio Conte at Inter Milan as well.
Yeah,
he's a big believer in the big front man. Hopefully, he stays longer than Maurizio Sarri. We'll talk about him
Yes.
After.
Indeed.
But I think I just in summary to end that. I mean, I think it's an interesting topic. I think it shows football's evolution, but I do think as well it's good to have different styles of play, different methods of setting up. Because if everyone sets up in this 4-3-3 with a false nine that drops back, with the two wide players coming in centrally to score goals, it'd be quite boring, wouldn't it, to see the same?
Yeah, it would. It would absolutely. Yeah.
All the time. So I think we should actually treasure maybe some Jose Mourinho antics or Sean Dyche. Other managers are available, because again, it also it sometimes makes you appreciate the beautiful football that's played by other managers a little bit more, and it's also nice to see counter tactics all across the field. Anyway, so shifting on to topic 3, actually quite different. Talked about Firmino quite a bit in there. We'll talk about Liverpool quite a bit now. So they were champions by a landslide this season. They've done really, really well in the Premier League, less so in the other competitions. So what do we? How would we sort of assess? How do they improve next season? Where are they? What do they have to do? And also, it's on a shoestring budget. I know the fans are going absolutely crazy because rivals are being linked with Sancho, Havertz, and they're struggling to pay £30 million for Thiago. So is it a legitimate concern, or can they believe in the mentality that Jurgen Klopp's instilled in all of them to really push Man City again next season for the title?
I don't think it's a concern next season because they've got such a strong squad already, and a lot of them are in their prime still. Mane, Salah, Van Dijk, Alisson. A lot of them are in their prime still. Firmino, they will be competitive next season without any question. And I mean, if they did manage to get Thiago, that would be sensational.
I feel like in my head, I'm just reading between the lines. Wijnaldum has 12 months left on his contract, and they're not sure if he's going to sign. Thiago's got 12 months left on his contract, and Bayern don't think he's going to sign. So could it be a case of maybe seeing out the season with Wijnaldum and then, shifting on, maybe going for Thiago on a free transfer in 12 months? He's apparently very keen by the Liverpool project.
Yeah, he is. He really wants to go there, doesn't he? So I don't know. I'm not sure how that will work out.
I mean, Wijnaldum's been a fantastic player for Liverpool, hasn't he?
He has. So it depends on what they're willing to spend and what they have to spend. But I think they can be competitive this season without any big signings. But the only thing is that Manchester City are going to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Judging by the players that they're being linked with, and they will improve significantly next season. They will have a stronger squad in depth to cope with injuries, fixture congestion, etc. Their defence will be much stronger. And they will have that extra motivation of wanting to win their title back.
And
they won't have the pressure of being champions. They will have the drive that Liverpool had this season. A manager who is very, very focused on winning the league, and always says the league is the priority for him, and is a winner. So I think it's going to be, and of course they've got experience of winning it before, so they don't have to fear that either. So I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody to stop Manchester City winning the league. However, that said, if Manchester City go far in the Champions League, they will start their season later and will have more fixture congestion as a result. So that would allow Liverpool to get a good start. So that would be Liverpool's way of, if they can get a good lead early on. But I would still think Manchester City could claw that back. But that would make a more interesting title race, that's for sure. So I do think Manchester City will go far in the Champions League. They will get to at least the semi-final.
I agree with you. I think they probably will as well. I mean, with the Thiago Wijnaldum thing, as I say, with the 12 months on each, because I think it's an interesting dilemma they've got. If you can offload Wijnaldum for 30 million, that pays the Thiago fee. But again, it's difficult. It's difficult with the world as it is. It's difficult. Is Wijnaldum a player? I mean, he's a very good player. Does very well. It's a very good system player for Liverpool, I think, in that he's another one of the selfless crew that puts in a lot of running, a lot of miles, and doesn't necessarily get the credit in terms of goals and assists from that number 8 position. As we said, the number 8 positions at Liverpool are very different to the ones at Manchester City. At Manchester City, they're designed to get goals, assists, be creative, be the creative hubs. At Liverpool, they're designed to more or less keep the tempo going, but get the ball to the fullbacks, because the fullbacks are the 2 creative hubs, aren't they, at Liverpool? Whereas I think if they got Thiago, in fairness, you'd have a 3 creative hubs. Because I think Wijnaldum's a very good player. I think he suits the system really well, and that's why they'd be happy to let him see out his contract, probably, instead of having Thiago. But if you had Thiago there, you've got someone who's a legitimate world-class creator in the middle of the pitch alongside Robertson and Alexander-Arnold. So then if you had someone who was, say, there was an injury to one of the fullbacks, as we've seen this season, when there's an injury to one of the fullbacks, suddenly it's a grind for Liverpool to get through games sometimes, because quite frankly, they haven't had the same, there's not enough creation elsewhere. But then if you had Thiago there, you would have that extra level of creation in the middle of the pitch.
That's right. It's not a surprise that they're going for another left back as well.
No, good point.
They're promoting that academy right back as well, aren't they? Who's meant to be
Neco Williams. I've been impressed by him, to be fair.
So I think Liverpool will be strong. If they got Thiago over the line and another left back from Norwich, I forget his name.
Jamal Lewis.
Jamal Lewis. That's it. Yeah, they would be in a very strong position again. So, and they will compete for the title. They will be title challengers. They will go to the.
As well, James, you mentioned Jamal Lewis. Also, I was watching Olympiacos v Wolves, and there's been a link with another left back, Konstantinos Tsimikas, the Greek player for Olympiacos. Very, very impressed with him. I was. I mean, so much energy, good tackling. Did really well against Adama Traore in that match, and also almost nearly scored a goal early on as well. Chest and foot across the ball for a half volley. They sort of did a bit of a look at him, a bit more in depth, and he does seem like a very good player. And with Olympiacos as well, in the Greek league, which has nowhere near the same amount of revenue as the Premier League, then there might be more value in getting someone like Tsimikas, who looks a very, very good player, than spending 20 million, what Norwich want, on Jamal Lewis, someone who's still very, very young. And has a lot of development to do. I mean, I know Tsimikas is young as well. He's in his 20s. But, at this moment in time, Liverpool really are. It does seem like 5 million, 10 million is a lot for them. So they might get more out of Tsimikas than they would out of Jamal Lewis, in terms of they could get him for cheaper and probably have a similar level player. And as you've alluded to, James, Neco Williams, very exciting prospect for them. Of course, Trent Alexander-Arnold came through the youth setup. Neco Williams has a lot of self-confidence, judging by what I've seen of him. And I think one thing that's important for Liverpool is, if they need to rest or there's a slight injury to Alexander-Arnold or Robertson, the players who step up to those positions, although they won't be quite on the same level, they need to have a similar. They need to keep that tempo going, so they need to still have the same energy. They need to still be able to cross the ball. They need to still be able to, because in the past it's been James Milner at left back. I know when we had Matt Addison on here, he was very, he used to say James Milner would get the ball at left back and then come inside and pass it with his right foot. And that sort of slows the tempo down. And then at right back, you've had Joe Gomez go there. But Joe Gomez is a lot better at centre back. So it's important that they have options that can at least get to, 6. If they're not at the level of Alexander-Arnold Robertson, they can still play a bit like Alexander-Arnold Robertson. So you've still got that. It doesn't, because Liverpool's a tempo team. They want to get the ball up the pitch quickly. They want the fullbacks to get up and down the pitch quickly. They want to, they're all about working hard, putting lots of energy on display, and then, with a bit of hope, the right back and the left back get themselves in good positions to fizz balls in, and they get lots of assist numbers. So I think they need people of that ilk again in reserving backup. Again, backup's hard because you're not going to play over Robertson or Alexander-Arnold, but it's important that there is something there. And just one thing as well, James, before we do go on. I mean, Dejan Lovren's left for 10.9 million, and that does leave a bit of a gap at centre back. And Klopp likes to promote from within, and Kijana Hova is a very promising young player there. But they've been linked with Ozan Kubak of Schalke, who's a centre back, who is very young, Turkish, 20 years old, still developing his game. But also he is the manager of Schalke, of course, is I forgot what his name is now. It's the old Huddersfield manager. They're very good friends with Jurgen Klopp. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I have everything there. I thought I could just do that off the top of my head. I'll come back to you. But he's there, and they're hoping. I've heard reports that they hope they could get a deal because of the friendship of the two managers. There might be something in the pipeline there. But also Ben White, who was on loan at Leeds from Brighton, and did so well. He did so well that Brighton now want quite a big fee for him from Leeds. And again, when I say quite a big fee, that might put Liverpool off themselves. But they do have to probably have 4 fit and able centre backs, especially when Matip is almost like glass, isn't he? When he's a very good performer, very good performer actually. Certainly, I'd say he's one of the better centre backs in the Premier League. When he plays, I think he's very good, especially next to Van Dijk. But again, is he going to be able to stay fit if Joe Gomez or Van Dijk are unavailable? It's a risk, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's areas that they could strengthen, but they've got to be selective this summer.
Yeah, no, they do. And I think we touched on it a bit before, the fact Man City could have a late start with the Champions League this time. Sorry, they could have a late start because of the Champions League this time, and that's going to lead to fixture congestion. Players won't have enough rest. I mean, these Liverpool players should be, raring to go by the time the Premier League comes around. They're going to have a nice, relaxing August. They'll probably watch Man City in the Champions League, no doubt, eagerly.
Yeah.
And then it's going to come round, I think it's September the 18th, is it? Something like September the 12th. I think it might be September the 18th for people who've been in the Champions League. It's a week or 2 weeks off.
Barely any time at all, So.
No, but there's enough. It's enough of a break for Liverpool, isn't it? I think.
For Liverpool, yeah.
And I thought when I was watching them towards the end, Salah looked a bit tired. Mane looked a bit tired. Firmino looked a bit less effective at doing what he does. But to be fair, I suppose Firmino's game is going to look less effective if Salah and Mane aren't getting what they should be, aren't delivering with goal contributions. Robertson was in and out. He certainly looked off when just after Liverpool had won the league. People said he'd been drinking all week. So I think it'd be a good chance for them to recharge the batteries, won't it? The whole Liverpool squad, and you won't be surprised if they hit the ground running after a long break and time for reflection and time to relax.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think they will. I mean, they've got momentum. They've got confidence. Klopp is a great manager, great motivator, and he will have them fired up. There's no question about it. It's always more difficult. Second year, always.
And in theory, with Liverpool, they've won the league twice because 97 points was basically is basically enough, isn't it, to have won a league? Putting the effort in.
I mean, technically they have. They've got 197 points in 2 seasons. I think. 99 points, 97 points. 196 points.
196 points. Yeah, very good. No, they do.
Lower than Man City's 2 successive titles.
And I'll be honest, I couldn't find. I was trying to Google then. I couldn't find the answer to the Schalke match, but I know it has come to me. I think it's David Wagner, isn't it? David Wagner.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So they obviously him and Jurgen Klopp are very close friends. So maybe say they could get a deal done for this young Schalke defender. I mean that's quite interesting. We've got like 1 minute summary there really on the whole Liverpool thing as well. And one player it's good because I didn't mention that there's a lack of maybe attacking depth in the front three, and Origi's been linked with a move to Aston Villa, which could free up funds perhaps for someone like Ismail Assar or Said Bernmar of Brentford. So do you think that might be a good idea to get rid of Origi for one of those players? Or
if they can raise some money and get another attacking player in, that would be useful for them for sure.
No, I mean
they wanted Timo Werner to come in. I think from what I've read, they wanted Timo Werner to come in and be slowly integrated into the team,
Mm.
and then to play regularly from January when the African Cup of Nations is on. I don't know if it's been moved now, but that was
I
the
think,
original plan.
yeah, I imagine.
But so they did want an attack. They did want attacking improvements. So yeah, I mean, imagine if one of those three got injured, or two of them even, they'd be in deep
I think the
trouble.
consensus with Origi is that he's a very effective substitute player, and that he can come off the bench and be a big nuisance. But if you were to ask him to play 5 games in place of Mane or Salah, there'd be a massive drop in terms of quality there. Which, but he could still do a job for a smaller club. And of course, I quite like Ismaila Sarr, but would Watford want to recoup about the 30 million plus that we pay for him? Probably. They probably would. So but then again, Salah and Mane cost in the 30 millions, and if Liverpool have some transfer funds raised this summer, then I think they'd be wise to get some depth for those positions, because they've been very fortunate actually over the past season or so not to have really needed it too much. And then our final topic, really, I suppose, goes to it's Serie A related. It's Maurizio Sarri who's been sacked by Juventus today as we're recording this podcast. But also Antonio Conte, I can add, really, in a sense, is someone who's almost lost his job, apparently, or could still lose his job after talking a little bit out of turn. It's not the first time, I'm sure, as a Chelsea fan, James. Antonio Conte, absolutely phenomenal coach, but sometimes says a bit too much, in his media briefings or on the outside. But we'll start with Sarri. He wins Serie A with a squad that's not really his own. He's just got out to the Champions League to Lyon. And that's ultimately been deemed too big of a failure for him to keep his job. So he's been relieved of his duties. Maurizio Pochettino is now the man in the frame. But before we get to Poch, I mean, we're talking a bit before we went on the pod. It's very hard. We do feel this decision is quite harsh by Juventus, don't we?
Yeah, and because the problem, from what I can gather, and I've been trying to do some research and look at what Juventus fans are saying, the problem is not the manager. The problem is that their recruitment strategy has not been as good in the last 2 or 3 years as it was in the years before that. They seem to have been, what I can gather is they have been, their focus is, we want to win the Champions League. We want to win the Champions League.
Yeah.
And so we'll get Ronaldo. We'll get a few star names, and we'll just build around that and go for the Champions League, because they're dominant in Serie A. And so the next step up was winning the Champions League, and the squad that they've got has got a lot of dead wood in it for a team that's won the league. I mean, they won the league by 1 point in the end, so they kind of scraped over the line, really. It's not actually that good a squad for a team that won the league. Ronaldo was a big factor in them winning the league with his goals. I think he got over 30 goals.
He did, yeah.
And obviously they've got Dybala, who's a quality player.
Dybala, actually, James, is a player under Maurizio Sarri who's done far better because of Sarri. Under Allegri, it was quite a structural-based system. He struggled.
Yeah.
Wasn't quite as free. But in the Sarri system, I know Sarri's based on structure as well, as you know, at Chelsea with the 4-3-3.
Absolutely.
But it's a lot more free for attacking players than, say, as we say, Allegri was, where it was almost Jose Mourinho-esque, maybe you could say.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I think if you've given Sarri the players that he wanted for his system, and given him time to build that, then he could have done that at Juventus.
Yeah.
But the way that the expectation at Juventus is very, very high. They are ruthless, as we've seen. They will not hesitate to get rid of a manager if he's not good enough or if there's failure. And they still want to win the Champions League as quickly as possible. But I think there's got to be a recognition by the Juventus board that it's not just the manager, that they need to rebuild the entire squad and even change their philosophy on recruitment as well. Because if they want to win the Champions League, that's the only way they're going to do it. If they want to continue to be dominant in Italy, that's the only way they're going to do it.
Yeah,
last year their best signing was Matthias de Ligt. That was a great signing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a young centre back who's going to be an absolute top-class centre-back for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
But if they'd done more like that, if they've recruited more like that, they'd probably be better off.
Yeah, it took a while, didn't he, Delict, to sort of settle in, but now he's a regular.
Yeah, he did. But
no, I agree with you, James. I think it was a very good sign. Actually, I think it's quite funny. Obviously, Ronaldo was brought in because they thought he might be the person to help them win the Champions League, because they got close a few times. Of course, they had the final where they got so close, and Ronaldo's Real Madrid demolished them, I think. And also, I think as well, Barcelona as well. They played Barcelona, didn't they, in the final?
Yeah.
And they just couldn't seem to get a break, really, in many ways. It was quite sad coming so close. So that's why, of course, they went for Ronaldo, one of the two best players in the world for the past 10 years. And obviously, I think it's been interesting because Sarri's got a lot of criticism because he's tried to play Ronaldo as the striker. And he played at left wing yesterday. Yesterday being the day after. Sorry if anyone's listening to this. The day after Leon knocked Juventus out of the Champions League. But in fairness to Sarri, the other options up front were Higuain, who he had at Chelsea, of course, who's now on his last legs, isn't he? And
he had him happen as well.
Yeah, and Dybala could play there, but he seems to prefer to play at right wing, not necessarily at the striker for Maurizio Sarri's system. So. Right. Also, you've got in midfield, you've got a £400,000 a week, roughly, Aaron Ramsey, who's flattered to deceive, as I'm pretty sure many could have guessed. Juventus are a very big team. Sarri's a man who needs really good players in the midfield. I think he's just fallen short. Then you've got Adrien Rabiot, who's almost always a square peg in a round hole. Seems to look the part on certain games, but can't seem to settle or find consistency with his performances. You've got Bentancur, you've got Bernardeschi, who's a good young player, very quick, but again, I'm not convinced that he should be a regular starter at Juventus. They sold Cancelo, who's one of the best right backs around, and they brought Danilo in, and Danilo doesn't really play much. At right back, and Cuadrado played, I think, at right back against Lyon. Kingsley Coman went to Bayern Munich. Another very good young player who sort of slipped through the net. Pjanic has been playing largely as the six, hasn't played very well. And for some reason, Barcelona, another club with bizarre recruitment, have decided to pay quite big money for him. Matuidi is still there. Again, not good enough to be a technical midfielder for Maurizio Sarri, I don't think, in the middle of the pitch. Much more suited to an Allegri or style setup, or Didier Deschamps with France. Is very good for France. System player. Works hard. So I'm looking at it and thinking, this is basically largely Max Allegri's team that's used to Max Allegri's setups. Delict being someone who's come in who's probably is a very Sarri player, but still so many Allegri-minded players in there, used to the Allegri-minded setups. You can't just impose a philosophy that's completely different to that in a year, can you? And it's the same thing I was thinking when he was at Chelsea. Antonio Conte, quite defensive, three at the back system. And then suddenly he's going to Chelsea and it's like, right, you're not going to play three at the back now like you've done for the past two seasons. You're playing four at the back, 4-3-3, and you're going to be expansive football, quite a bit different maybe to what Antonio Conte was looking for when he was at Chelsea. And you can't impose that. You can't put a philosophy on the team within a season, can you? As I said, I feel like deja vu, but surely it's time and money. Although right now, big clubs don't offer time very much, and money's more scarce than it once was with the pandemic.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Juventus need to sell what they can buy. There's been rumours about Ronaldo going to PSG as well.
That wouldn't surprise me.
That would not surprise me in any way.
No.
And actually, if they did sell him to PSG, that would give them money to rebuild a lot of the squad. They could bring in 2 or 3 players for that, and that would make a lot of sense actually in the long run. And it depends on what the Juventus board wants to do, and it depends on what their philosophy is. If I was in charge of Juventus, I would take a longer term perspective. I would appoint a manager who can build a young team which can have sustained.
You know what's quite funny though, James? You said they bring Ronaldo in to win the Champions League, but they bring Sarri in. And it doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't. No. It's like people making decisions.
I don't know why they went for him in the first place.
People are making decisions that don't quite work or compute in the right way because they want to win the Champions League. They bring Ronaldo in, then they bring Sarri in, And that's almost saying, right, well, we have to rip up the original plan with Allegri and start from scratch. So we need to build something again. You know, it doesn't.
I had this
And
feeling.
he's not a winner, is he? I mean, I like Sarri a lot, but he's not someone a serial trophy winner. He's not someone who, you know, he's someone who implements a philosophy on the team, but it takes time. So it doesn't make. Surely, I mean, arguably Jose Mourinho would have been a better shout for Juventus because
he would have been a very good shout for Juventus
because it's a similar style to Allegri, but he wins things, or he has won things quite regularly, and he's managed Ronaldo.
That club like a glove, absolutely, absolutely would have done. Yeah.
See, James, this is why I don't get the Pochettino thing, because I know you quite like the idea of a link. If Pochettino went to take over that current Juventus team now with not much money left over, there's a lot of aging players.
Yeah, it would be a big job. It's a long-term job. Without a doubt.
I still think it's got shadows of the previous manager Allegri in it, and it never fully adapted to Sarri. Obviously, Pochettino's a bit more flexible, but he still wants to play that progressive brand of football. But again, Pochettino is a man who you back with time. Not quite as he didn't quite get the money at Spurs, but it certainly backed him with time. And you're not going to bring Pochettino in to say, right, I want you to win the Champions League now, because I don't think he's that kind of coach. I don't think it makes sense.
This is what I would do. I mean, if I was Juventus, I would take a long-term approach rather than I'd just like to say, okay, we're not going to win the Champions League with this squad. We need to rebuild the squad, and so let's take a long-term approach and put someone in charge. I mean, Allegri was there for 5 or 6 years, wasn't he? So it's not like
he built an identity there. Like I say, you can't just get rid of that in a year. So I just think it is a bit silly.
Yeah. So I don't know what they will do. I have no idea what they actually will do.
No.
There's been rumours about Pochettino, obviously, because he's available. But we don't actually know. I mean, there's rumours about Inzaghi as well. Zidane is another one.
Zidane. That'd be interesting.
I mean, like there's a scenario where Zidane could go to Juventus and Pochettino would go to Real Madrid. So, but we're not really sure yet. I mean, it only just happened. He was sacked a couple of hours before we recorded this podcast. So it's going to be an interesting one, that though. I think
I still have that picture in my head where he won the Europa League with Chelsea. He's there cradling his medal, and there's no better sight, is there, than a man.
That was kind of beautiful, that, because he's been a coach for 30 years. He had to work his way up from the bottom.
He did.
He had to get promoted a few times, and then got Napoli, and then now in the Chelsea job, and that was his first major trophy. And he done it. I mean, now he's got a league title. Yes, he's been sacked, but he can now say, look, I won a major league title and I won a European trophy, and that'd be great for him. But I think Maurizio Sarri, and I saw an Italian journalist allude to this, isn't suited to big clubs with expectations to win trophies every season.
No.
He needs to be allowed to do his work and build a team that can play his way, with players that suit his philosophy, and do that over a few years. Like at Napoli, he was given 3 years, and he built a team which very nearly won Serie A. I mean, got really close to winning Serie A.
He was
tantalisingly close to winning it. And if a club can do that, you can find another club where they give him that time to build and do things his way. He'll be successful. I mean, I'm talking about not in terms of trophies, but he'll build a really good team and a competitive team.
Quick word on Antonio Conte as well, James. I mean, when they finished Serie A, it looked like we're going to finish second, quite a good start, and then he had a huge rant against the board and against certain people, criticising him and not giving him or his players enough credit. It sounded like he was going to leave. It sounded like Max Allegri was prepared to come in, and that probably would have made a bit of sense. But I think it's sort of the tempers have calmed down a little bit now. And I do think as well, I mean, it would be crazy, wouldn't it? Conte is very much a system manager, 3 at the back, wing backs, big man up front, Lukaku. He built something okay. He spent quite a bit of money as well on the Conte project. Even though Allegri is quite a structural manager, I mean, for him to come in and then change it to a back 4, and you're not using wing backs like Hakimi, who's just come in and who thrives at wing back, and then Lukaku. I suppose he'd still do quite well under Allegri, but I mean, it would have been crazy, wouldn't it, if Conte had pressed selfish on his own project?
He's got history of this.
Yes,
he did this at Juventus. He threatened when he was at Juventus. He threatened to leave a couple of times,
Yeah.
and never did, just to get the board to back him. And then one day he actually did. He just walked out. At Chelsea, he did exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of messed up that whole 2017 summer for them, really.
Yeah.
Ended up with some players that they're still trying to get rid of. And it's not a surprise
No.
that he did that. And he will stay, I think. You know, it depends on who Juventus get as their manager and who they recruit.
As we say with Conte,
he can even win Serie A next year. You know,
with Conte, I think the general consensus is the fans generally love him because he's almost one of the fans on the touchline. He is a very good coach, and most of the players get behind him and do support him because he's a very good coach, almost Mourinho-esque, but a bit more in touch, I suppose, with the modern game slightly, I guess, than maybe Mourinho is. Mourinho's got a bit more to prove now. But one big flaw to both Mourinho and Conte, I suppose, is the temperament. Conte is even worse than Mourinho in that respect. Mourinho's sarcastic and Conte goes on blazing angry rants. So I think he'll need to keep himself in check. But it's a shame, as I say, that Sarri lost his job. And to be fair, actually, Conte is was linked with Juventus, ironically. So that would be bizarre. I don't think
real. Allegri or Conte went to Juventus. I mean, that would be almost like admitting defeat.
It would be madness. It'd be absolutely madness.
Short-termism, you know. I mean, God, there's some clubs that are not being run very well at the moment. Barcelona.
Some shockingly ran clubs across the board, and I think that's a nice way to. Well, that's not a nice way, but it's a horrible way to finish that topic, and then just sort of call time on the podcast. So yeah, this should be on. It should be on iTunes, Buzzsprout, and Spotify, and also the pet project of YouTube, which again is something that I am working on with a view to the new season being a lot more watched than it currently is. We're doing very well on the general podcasting platforms, but the YouTube project does need a bit of work, and hopefully you'll see all that grand design before the season starts. But for now, I think that's a bye from me and a bye from James.
Bye everyone.
See you next week.